One of the characteristics that sets Japan apart from other countries in the world is the extremely low percentage of Christians. In Japan, Christians make up less than 1% of the population. Why are there so few Christians in Japan? This is a very interesting question that is deeply connected to Japanese history and culture. First, let's take a look at the drama series Shogun, which recently made headlines for winning Emmy Awards. Shogun is a work of fiction inspired by real people such as Shogun Tokugawa Ieyasu and the Englishman William Adams, who was cast away to Japan, depicting the eve of the Battle of Sekigahara, an important battle in Japanese history. The story development itself is quite different from the actual history, but the situation surrounding Christianity in Japan at that time is depicted based on the actual history. For example, in the second episode of the series, Servants of Two Masters, there is a memorable scene. John Blackthorne, William Adams, who later became Miura Anjin, a British navigator, is brought to Toranaga Yoshii, who corresponds to Ieyasu, and explains the situation at the time while drawing a world map in the sand. He describes the world situation by drawing two vertical lines on the map. He said, "These are the borders of the New World, drawn up by the two nations of Spain and Portugal. 70 years ago, they agreed to divide up the unknown world. Your country is on the Portuguese side, so it's Portuguese territory." Hearing this, Toranaga's expression was so shocked it took his breath away. The two vertical lines that Anjin drew at this point refer to the Treaty of Tordesillas in 1494 and the Treaty of Zaragoza in 1529, which are concluded between Spain and Portugal, and are of course historical facts. These are treaties that Spain and Portugal arbitrarily decided on the distribution of their overseas colonies. The Jesuit missionaries who came to Japan at that time of course had the goal of spreading Christianity in Japan. However, it is also a historical fact that they planned to cooperate with their home country in ruling Japan by installing Christian rulers. The spread of Christianity in Japan began with the arrival of Catholic priest and Jesuit Francis Xavier in 1549. The missionaries continued to spread their faith despite clashes with the Japanese, and thanks to the protection of the most powerful Sangoku daimyo, Oda Nobunaga, they increased the number of followers. However, during the reign of Toyotomi Hideyoshi, who unified the country, cases of Christians persecuting Shinto and Buddhism arose. Missionaries took the lead in inciting and carrying out the destruction of shrines and Buddhist temples. Furthermore, when Portuguese merchants trafficked Japanese people overseas as merchandise for the slave trade, the Jesuits had given their approval to the slave ships. Upon hearing this, Hideyoshi issued an edict to expel the missionaries in 1578 and banned their missionary work. However, at this time, the profits of trade with the Portuguese could not be ignored, and there was also the fear of rebellions by Christian lords and believers in Kyushu. So full-scale expulsion was not carried out, and missionary work was more or less tolerated. However, around the time of the San Felipe incident, Hideyoshi began full-scale persecution of Christianity. In 1594, the Spanish ship San Felipe, which had departed from the Philippines, was hit by a typhoon and washed ashore off the coast of Tosa in Shikoku. the magistrate thoroughly questioned the captain and crew at the time, and a report was made that Spain was planning to first send missionaries to various countries and then use them as a foothold to invade. This enraged Hideyoshi, and he began severely persecuting missionaries and Christians. Apart from this incident, there are also letters remaining from priests staying in Japan, informing their home countries of plans for Portugal and Spain to attack Japan. William Adams was cast ashore in Japan about 6 months before the Battle of Sekigahara. In 1600, Tokugawa Ieyasu won the Battle of Sekigahara and achieved national unification. It seems that Ieyasu also gradually became aware of the danger of the spread of Christianity within the country and the increase in the number of Christians. For example, during the siege of Osaka, in which he fought against the remaining Toyotomi forces, many Christian samurai participated on Toyotomi's side, and it is said that Jesuit and Franciscan priests were present in the castle to encourage the believers. This also strengthened Ieyasu's sense of crisis about Christianity. Thus, in 1614, an edict banning Christianity was issued nationwide, and the missionaries were expelled from the country, and the churches were destroyed. At this time, I think Ieyasu was certainly aware of the aggressive nature of Christianity, which was linked to the nations behind it. In other words, the connection between the spread of Christianity and the ambition to dominate colonies. It is possible that the influence of William Adams, who served as Ieyasu's diplomatic advisor, was also a factor. Ieyasu also seems to have realized that Christianity was very different from the views of nature and humanity held by Japanese, a country of gods and Buddhas. He probably felt this difference on a visceral level, and the differentness of Christianity that Ieyasu felt is something that we modern Japanese people also feel somewhere. The Christianity preached by the Jesuit was based on the strong belief that those who do not awaken to faith are not human, and was extremely arrogant in its attempt to save non-Christian people who are considered to be subhuman by Christianizing them. They even called the gods and Buddhas believed in by the Japanese devils. They justified slavery with the idea that even if they became slaves, they could become civilized people called Christians if they were baptized. The Japanese people lived in the country of gods and Buddhas with a loose belief in the 8 million gods and Buddhas. The self-righteousness and exclusivity of the monotheistic religion of Christianity must have seemed very foreign to the people of that time, and the feeling that there is something different about the religion that strongly believes in the one and only God and tried to spread that belief is probably shared more or less by modern Japanese people. So, how did Japan come to be the country of gods and Buddhas? I think the basis for this was the Japanese climate, which was far removed from the desert climate that gave birth to monotheism. In relation to this, I'd like to mention 2 unique aspects of Japanese history. One is the existence of the long Jomon period, and the other is the continuity of culture since Jomon period. And I believe these 2 factors explain why Christians in Japan still make up less than 1% of the population. The Jomon period spans about 13,000 years, from 16,000 years ago to 3,000 years ago. One reason why the Jomon period is so unique is that, while it had the characteristic of the Neolithic period, it did not engage in full-scale agriculture. The Jomon period had the characteristic of the Neolithic period, such as the development of pottery and groundstone tools, and the practice of settling down, but it did not involve full-scale agriculture, which would have been the essence of the Neolithic period. I believe that this uniqueness of the Jomon period had a great impact on Japanese culture thereafter. Moreover, I believe that it was during this period that the foundation of Japanese religious consciousness were cultivated. The Japanese archipelago was covered in forests, surrounded by fertile seas, and an abundance of natural food. Furthermore, they were the first in the world to use earthenware for cooking, expanding the range of foods they could eat. As a result, they had a stable food situation even without engaging in full-scale farming, and were even able to settle down. In other words, the Jomon people, embraced by Mother Nature, settled in villages, cooking with earthenware, and built a long-lasting advanced culture without farming. However, while the natural environment of the Japanese archipelago was so harsh, it was exposed to the threat of earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, and typhoons. The Jomon people were grateful for the blessing of the rivers, forests, and sea, but at the same time felt a sense of awe for the destructive power of the earth, sea, and wind. These feelings toward nature became a foundation of Shintoism, which was later born in Japan. It was a polytheistic religion that found individual gods in each of the abundant natural objects. Another unique aspect of Japanese history is the continuity of culture since the Jomon period. However, Shintoism, which inherited the spirit of the Jomon, was not abandoned, and the two coexisted and eventually even merged to a great extent. The emperor valued both Shintoism and Buddhism. In other words, Japan became a country of gods and Buddhas. If these two had been monotheistic religions that excluded each other, they would not have been able to coexist or merge. In this way, the Japanese people inherited the blood and spirit of the Jomon people, while blending it with cultures introduced from the continent. And in modern times, they also blended in Western cultures. And even today, they live on this multi-layered foundation. Monotheism such as Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, which have a desert background, are religions with a strong exclusionary character. Polytheism such as Shinto and Buddhism have a strong receptive character. This receptiveness can also be called maternal. Since the Jomon period, Japan has been blessed with abundant motherly nature and forests, and has nurtured a polytheistic culture with a strong maternal principle. That is why Japanese culture was able to accept other religions and cultural elements such as Buddhism and Confucianism while maintaining Shinto. In other words, it was difficult to accept monotheism, which believes in one god, excludes the gods of other religions, and even calls them devils. It can also be said that it is a religion born in the desert and has a strong paternal character. The language and culture of the Japanese people are based on the Jomon and maternal principles. So Christianity, which has a paternal principle, does not fit the sensibility of the Japanese people. I believe that this is the fundamental reason Why Christianity and other monotheism did not spread in Japan.